Sarah worked in a small cubicle, tucked away in the corner of a busy office. She was quiet and kept to herself, always focused on her work. Day after day, she showed up early, stayed late, and never asked for much. Most of her coworkers barely noticed her. To them, she was just another face in the crowd, a woman who didn't stand out and didn't speak up. Lately things had been tough for Sarah. Bills piled up and rent was due, but she never complained. She managed to keep a calm smile, even when the stress felt like a heavy weight on her shoulders. One afternoon, she finally gathered the courage to ask her manager for a raise. She hoped he would listen, maybe even understand, but instead he laughed right in her face. "You're too soft for this place," he sneered. Not leadership material. What he didn't know was that Sarah had a past he could never imagine, one that would change everything. Sarah wasn't always the quiet office worker people thought she was. Years before, she had lived a very different life, one filled with danger, courage, and sacrifice. Sarah had served in the U.S. Army, where she wasn't just another soldier, she was a leader. She had led missions in faraway places, places most people only heard about on the news. In Afghanistan, Sarah and her team faced constant threats. They walked through dusty villages, helped protect civilians, and carried out dangerous patrols. She was the one her team looked up to, the one who stayed calm when everything around her was chaos. She saved lives, sometimes risking her own. One mission changed everything. An explosion tore through the area, and Sarah was badly injured. Her leg was damaged so badly she had to leave the military. Coming home wasn't easy. The loud noise of the office felt strange after the silence of the desert. The bright lights hurt her eyes. But most of all, she struggled with how people looked at her. Her limp made some coworkers uncomfortable. Her quiet nature made others think she wasn't strong. They didn't see the medals she earned, or the battles she survived. Instead, she felt invisible, like no matter what she did she was just soft or fragile. So she kept her past to herself, and took the office job to support herself. She wanted nothing more than to be treated fairly and with respect. But after years of hiding who she really was, Sarah was ready to speak up. Sarah's office was a place where loud voices ruled. Most of the managers and team leaders were men who talked over others and made quick decisions without listening. Sarah's quiet way of working didn't fit in. She often stayed late fixing mistakes others made or finishing projects on time, but no one thanked her for it. Her manager Rick was the loudest of them all. He liked to favor the younger confident guys who talked a lot but didn't always do the work. Recently a new guy named Jake got a big raise. Jake was flashy and quick to brag, but often missed deadlines. Meanwhile Sarah quietly did double his work and still earned less. She felt tired, invisible, and underappreciated. Each day she wondered if it was worth it. But deep inside, Sarah believed in herself. She knew her work mattered, even if no one else seemed to notice. One morning, Sarah sat at her desk and looked around. She saw Jake chatting loudly, getting compliments from Rick, and realized something had to change. She couldn't keep being ignored while others took credit for her hard work. Sarah decided that day she would ask Rick for a raise. It wasn't easy. Her hands shook, and her voice felt small when she finally said, "Can we talk?" But she was done being silent. She was done being overlooked. Sarah knocked lightly on Rick's office door and stepped inside when he called her in. Her heart pounded, but she stood tall. She took a deep breath and said, "I'd like to talk about a raise." Rick looked up from his computer, raising an eyebrow. "A raise," he scoffed. "Why? You're not exactly the type we see as leadership material." Sarah's throat tightened. She tried to explain calmly. "I've been staying late, fixing problems, and doing extra work that no one else does. I think my efforts deserve recognition." Rick laughed, a cold, sharp laugh. "Look, Sarah, you're too soft for this place. You don't have what it takes to lead or make big decisions. Just be grateful you have a job." His words hit her harder than she expected. She bit her lip, fighting back tears. Rick glanced at her limp as if it proved his point. But Sarah wasn't finished. Slowly she reached into her bag and pulled out a worn folder. She opened it and placed it on his desk. Inside were photos of her in uniform, certificates, and military medals. Rick's laughter stopped, his eyes flicked nervously between the papers and Sarah's steady gaze. "I led teams in Afghanistan," she said quietly but firmly. "I saved lives, I survived things you can't imagine. If I could face a war zone, I can handle this job." The room grew silent. Rick didn't know what to say. Outside the door, some coworkers stopped to listen. Sensing something had changed. For the first time, Sarah wasn't invisible. Rick stared at the papers on his desk, his face pale. The photos showed Sarah in her military uniform, standing tall and proud. The medals gleamed under the office light, hard-earned symbols of courage and sacrifice. Rick's usual sneer was gone, replaced by a mixture of surprise and awkward silence. Sarah's voice stayed calm, but carried a quiet strength. "I didn't tell anyone, because I wanted to be judged by my work here, not my past. But you laughed at me. You said I was too soft. I just wanted you to see the truth." Rick cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. "I didn't know," he said softly. "That's the problem," Sarah replied. "You thought I was weak because I'm quiet. Because I have a limp. But I'm not soft, and I'm not invisible. I've faced things most people never will." Just then, a few coworkers who had overheard the conversation gathered near the door. They exchanged looks of respect and admiration for Sarah, something they had never shown before. Rick's silence spoke volumes. For once he was unsure of what to say or do. Word spread quickly through the office. Sarah's story wasn't just about a raise anymore. It was about respect, courage, and standing up for what's right. HR got involved after some employees reported Rick's behavior. He was put on probation for his disrespect and unfair treatment of Sarah and others. For the first time, the company took a hard look at how women, especially veterans, were treated. Sarah was offered a raise and even a promotion to a team leader role. But instead of jumping at the chance, she asked for something different. She wanted to start a veteran support program within the company, helping others who struggled to adjust after serving. The company agreed. Sarah began mentoring coworkers who were veterans, sharing her experiences and guiding them through the challenges of civilian life. Her strength inspired many. Her story was soon shared on LinkedIn, where thousands read about the quiet woman who refused to be ignored. Messages poured in from veterans and civilians alike, thanking her for speaking up. Sarah's life had changed, but more importantly, so had how her company, and maybe even her community, thought about strength and leadership. She was no longer the quiet worker in the corner. She was a leader, a mentor, and a symbol of courage. Days later, Sarah walked past Rick's office. He didn't look up or meet her eyes. The man who once laughed at her now seemed smaller somehow. But Sarah didn't feel angry or bitter. She carried something stronger inside, a quiet confidence that came from knowing her own worth. She had survived battles that most people couldn't imagine. And now she was fighting a different kind of battle, one for respect and fairness. Her strength wasn't loud or flashy. It was steady, patient, and real. She didn't need to shout to be heard anymore. In that moment, Sarah realized something important: she had never been soft. Not once. She was a warrior on the battlefield, and in the office. And finally the world was starting to see her that way too.